Hey, it's Dr. Sasheen, and I am back. So let's talk about, I drew something for you. Oh, if you're new here, it's Dr. Sasheen. This is Women in Transition Blogcast, and today we're talking about the burning questions that we ask at each of the pivotal decades of our life. And I'm going to show you why the question that you need to answer now is the best one ever on the page. Okay. So if you saw my short, you've seen this schematic already, but I'm going to show it to you again. This thing right here, okay? I can't really see. So, box number one. In our 20s. I'm not gonna talk down to the 20-year-olds because if we've made it a certain age, my hair is sticking out again. Oh well. If you've made it to your Gen X, you've made it through, you were 20s at one point. But in our 20s, a lot of what we're focusing on is the question of what am I doing? What am I doing, right? And our box is small. Like the 20s is a very compact space because we don't know anything and we haven't really done anything. And a lot of us in our 20s, we haven't really been anywhere. Even if you've traveled some with your family, until you've traveled on your own as an adult, you don't really understand what it's like to be out in the world by yourself, right? So when you're with your family, and you're traveling with your family, it's just different, right? It's just different. It's just different. Sorry. We're having hair issues today. For those of you who follow this channel, I'm always having hair issues, mainly because my hair gets really dry. Side note, it just gets really dry. I'm assuming it's part of menopause, perimenopause, but my hair will frizz if I look at it sideways. So I try not to look at it sideways. And so it's not unmoisturized. It's just, I have cotton candy hair. I digress. So in our 20s, we're struggling with the question of basically, what am I doing? And the answer is you're doing what you're told. You're in your 20s. You just got out of high school. You might be going to college. You might be working. You might be doing a lot of things. Hopefully you weren't starting a family. But if you were, that happened too. But the reality is most people in their 20s aren't focused because they don't have anything to focus on, right? Like they haven't lived through a bunch of stuff yet to have perspective about things. So the focus in your 20s is just about getting through your 20s. That's why your box of experience is tiny. See, it's small. And all you're trying to figure out is, what am I going to do? I'm going to get a job. I'm going to go to college. And a lot of the times, what we're doing in our 20s is just what we're expected to do by the people in our lives. We're not really making autonomous decisions. We think we are. Oh, we're going to decide which college to go to. We're going to apply to a certain job. You're doing exactly what society has programmed you to do. And you don't realize that you don't really have the autonomy because you haven't seen autonomy yet to know that you don't have it. And that is one of the interesting, I don't want to say lies of our 20s, but in some ways it's the lie of freedom, youth and freedom and all this stuff. But the reality is you're more boxed in because you don't know what you don't know yet. And as we progress down the timeline and you start realizing all the things that you didn't know, remember that saying, if you could do it all over again, knowing what you know now, would you do it again? Most people, if they're being honest, would go, if I can keep all of the knowledge that I have now, but start again in my 20s, heck yes, I'm going back. Abso-freaking-lutely. And I'm making some different decisions about some important points in my life. But we don't get that. But the reason that question even presents itself is because the illusion of freedom in our 20s is just that. It's an illusion. We don't really have much freedom because we don't know what freedom really is yet. Then we move on to our 30s. See, a little bit bigger. Our box is slightly bigger, not huge, because in our 30s, we just kind of settle into, I guess I'm going to just do this thing. Right? I went to school in my 20s, or maybe I got a job. Maybe I did both. And so I've graduated and now I'm either into that career, and in your 30s, you're kind of expected to build, right? Which is so weird because you're only in your 30s, but you're now expected to build a family and stuff and a life and maybe even, buy a house, and all these things happen. And you start just kind of settling into decisions made in your 20s when you didn't have a lot of choices and their autonomy was really a myth. So you're doing as you're told. And then the 30s roll around and you're just kind of like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. What are you all doing? I guess I'm doing this. I guess I'm climbing the corporate ladder, or I guess I'm growing my family, or I guess I'm getting married, or I guess I'm doing whatever it is that seems to be what everybody else around me is doing. Unless you find places in the cycle to break that cycle, that's the cycle that most people are in. In your 30s, you're just doing what everybody else around you is doing. It might look a little different in terms of variety, but it's all still coffee. See what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter if it's a double whip cafe espresso naked latte or a cup of joe. It's still just coffee. And that's what a lot of things in their 30s, a lot of people in their 30s are doing. They're all drinking coffee. It's just they're trying to make it different kinds of coffee, not realizing that it's still all just coffee, which is why I guess in my 30s, this is what I'm doing, because what else am I supposed to do? All my friends are doing this. Please don't say you're not. You don't give in to peer pressure. We all give in to peer pressure. And again, unless something comes along and shakes you up out of that cycle, you're in that cycle. Okay. So we're in our 30s. We're settled. We're settling, whatever. Then our 40s rolls around. Notice how that box is a little bigger, because even though in our 30s, I know you see your 50s down there. Don't get excited yet. Even though in our 30s, the box is a little bigger, small box in our 20s, bigger box in our 30s. When we hit our 40s, even though we've kind of settled in, we've been on the planet at least 40 years. We've gone through 2 cycles of, 2 decades of adulthood. From 0 to 20, yes, you've got 4 decades technically under your belt. But again, until you are outside of the confines of your parents' experiences, homes, and everything else, you don't really have a sense of what freedom feels like. Once you get into your 30s, you do start to get a sense of what real freedom could feel like if you make some choices that take you away from the things that you're most comfortable with. In order to do that, you have to make some decisions in the, I guess I'm just going to do this phase of life and go, maybe I'm not going to do this. But that's a conversation for a different video. And for those of you who are ready to have a conversation about why you were the black sheep and why that was totally okay. Anyway, so we get to our 40s. And all of a sudden, it's like, I've been living this version of a life. And the question becomes, do I want to be doing this? That's where that midlife crisis thing comes in that people are always talking about. Do I want to be doing this? Like, let's take stock. And that's what people do, right? They start to take stock and go, gosh, I've been kind of doing this whole way of life since I was in my 20s. And now I'm in my 40s. And is this it? Is this all there is? Is it another 40 years of just doing this? Now, somewhere out there are a lot of people for whom but I just want to do the same thing for the next 40 years. I'm content, not really content, but they don't want to change because change is scary and change is disruptive, which is why people don't change. But for some of you in your 40s, this is the very question that you're asking right now, which is this it? Am I looking down the barrel of another 30 years? 40 years of doing this way of life, working this type of job, coffee, living this type of way, coffee, living in this type of town, coffee, just repurposing coffee into a prettier package, but the stuff inside isn't changing. And that's where that gnawing feeling comes from. And sometimes people get gnawed at enough that they say, I can't. And we want to call that a midlife crisis, right? Oh my God, I can't believe this, that they sold their house, bought an RV, and decided to travel across the country as far as they could go. Because why would they do that? They're in their 40s, almost 50. Because they got the call that said, no, in fact, this isn't what you have to do. It's that I can't believe they've been married since they were in their 20s, and all of a sudden, the minute the kids left, they got divorced, and he went this way and she went that way. Of course they did, because they looked down the barrel of their lives and thought, Is this what we still want to be doing with each other? Or have we outgrown that narrative and it's time for a change? We put a lot of blame on people in their 40s when they don't continue to conform to the stuff that they've been doing all along. When they shake the room with a decision, with an answer to the question of, do I still want to be doing this? And the answer is no. No. I, in fact, do not want to be doing this. We judge. We judge, and we judge them hard and harshly. We say horrible things about that woman who quit her job, cashed in her retirement, and moved to the south of France and left behind her grandkids. I can't believe she moved away when she's got grandkids. They ain't her kids. Those are not her children. Those are her grandchildren. Remember that grand part of children? Nobody said that you had to be the kind of grandmother that bakes pies on Sundays and goes to church with a cute little hat on and is around all the time, right? We get very upset and offended when people in their 40s, we haven't gotten to the 50s yet, in their 40s say, I in fact don't think that I want to be doing this for another decade. So I'm gonna go write that book, start a business, quit my job, go back to school, divorce my fill in the blank, get married, whatever the case may be. And it throws everyone around them in a tizzy because they weren't paying attention. They weren't paying attention to the fact that your 40s box is bigger because you have been living your life. You've watched the world pass by. And if you've been awake, you've been connected to it, you've seen the ebb and flows of time and history, you've realized that well-behaved women not only rarely make history, they die a silent scream of desperation that nobody hears. Why? Because everyone else around them is also dying in a silent desperation, a silent scream of desperation. So then we move on to our 50s. Look at the size of that box. The boxes after this one get huge. Look at the size of this box. You know why this box is so big? You've been on the planet half a century. Half a century. You have hit the half a century mark. Your experiences, they're in there. Your foibles, they're in there. The loves, the pains, the hopes, the joys, the decisions, the mistakes, the successes, all of it is now in this box called 50. This one, this big old box called 50. Like I said, they get bigger. And now you're like, what do I get to do with all this? What do I get to do? The question that you now need to answer, Gen Xers, I get to do fill in the blank. I get to do, I'm telling y'all, I'm gonna cut all my hair off one of these days. I mean, I'm not. It's just because I had it in a braid and took it down that it looks so crazy. But I get to do. What do you get to do now? Because you don't have to do what you were told in your 20s. You don't have to settle into that decision anymore in your 30s. You've come through your 40s where you're like, do I really want to continue to do this? And you might have made some changes, who knows? Or maybe you just said, yeah, I'm going to keep doing it. Whatever the case may be, you hit 50. And at 50, the next best question is, what do I get to do? What do I get to do? How do I get to live? Where do I get to live? Who do I get to live with? What do I get to wear? What do I get to eat? What do I get to listen to in my earbuds? What do I get to drink in my water bottle? Because y'all think it's water, you don't know what it is. What do I get for being half a century old? What do I get? You get the benefit of time, experience, and real freedom. And to bring this full circle, going back to our 20s, in our 20s, we have the illusion that youth brings freedom. That because we're young and we're unencumbered yet, we don't have any kids, hopefully, but mostly because we're young, probably young and broke, but we don't realize how broke we are because we're in our 20s, we won't need anything. But we are under the illusion that the world is right in front of us and we could do anything. And what we don't realize is so much of that world is painted for us by the people that we have grown up with who love us. I'm not knocking them, but they can only give us the reality that they're used to. So we make decisions in our 20s based on a freedom that's an illusion. It's not ours yet. But as we progressed up to this half a century mark, We have tasted real freedom. We've made decisions that were terrible, but they were ours. We have had the privilege of sitting in our own mess and figuring out how to stand back up and make a different choice. We have had the pleasure and the privilege to be loved by people, and we've had the horror and the pain of being hurt by people. And we have chosen to keep right on going. We got back up again and stood on our feet. And at the half century mark, in our 50s, what we realize is that true freedom comes with not only the choices that you have, but the perspective that you've gained by virtue of the choices that you've made. When you're in your 20s, you just haven't made any choices yet. Not any real ones. When you hit 50, you've made some real choices. You've made some life-altering choices. And now you stand on the precipice of the next chapter of your life, and you get to decide, what do I get to do with all of this knowledge that I have acquired from all these choices that I got to make? The answer is whatever the hell you want to be doing. It just so happens that our cusp, our precipice, or whatever you want to call it, at half century, right now is falling during a time of international reshuffling. Okay? I'm going to call it a reshufflement because it's empires fall. It just is what it is. But in times of international reshuffling, there's a shuffle happening. There's a shuffle. Yeah, I'm going to keep my hair braided next time. Then I won't look like I have a string on my head. Anyway, but there's a shuffle happening, right? And in that shuffling comes these wonderful women who have lived half a century, who understand the long lens of history and what we can and cannot do and what we should and should not do, and who have the autonomy to make decisions that they did not have 40, 30 years ago. Times change. The world's changing. You have changed. If you're listening to this message and you fall in the bucket, this one here, freedom is your birthright. You've earned it. Now make some decisions that allow you to get to do the best version of your next life. And if you happen to be below the bucket in the 40s, 30s, or 20s, you don't have to live any of those decades like everybody else. You don't have to like coffee at all. You don't have to go, well, my preference is the double whip, no foam latte as opposed to the whatever. I don't drink coffee, so this analogy is going to have to work. You can actually say, I don't like coffee. I don't like coffee. I prefer whiskey and not with coffee inside it. Whiskey neat, 1 ice cube. Thanks. It takes a lot of self-understanding and awareness, right? To say that in your 20s, you like whiskey. But by the time you hit your 50s, you know what you like to drink. And it might be coffee, might be. But it's a coffee that comes with understanding that I've tried 400 different kinds of coffee. And I know the difference between burnt coffee and good coffee because I've lived a little. I can't tell you how many people in my life who love coffee, who are coffee connoisseurs and are baffled at some of the things that people will drink and call it coffee because they're like, that stuff is just swill and it's just terrible. But that actually really underscores the whole point. In your 20s, all coffee tastes good or it tastes bad. As you progress through your life, if you love something, you find better versions of it because your palate keeps refining itself. And as you get older and hit that half century mark, you start going, not only do I have a taste for whiskey, I have a taste for really good whiskey. The kind of whiskey that you don't necessarily find on the shelf at your local grocery store, right? Because your palate has refined itself because somewhere along the way, you got off the chain, you got off the cycle and said, I actually don't like coffee. I'd rather go work in a jazz club and try some whiskey and see what that might be like. I'm not interested in working in the mall. I'd rather take that senior trip, not going to South Padre Island or wherever the senior trips go these days. I'd rather backpack my way through Europe and see what happens. There's so many places in the cycle where people can get off, but it's hard, y'all. It's hard. But you, because you're here and you're listening to me, know that what I am saying, what I'm going to tell you is, what do you get to do? What do you get to do? If that's making a lot of noise, I'm sorry. What do you get to do? Even if you were stuck on the cycle, the first 50 years of your life, the first 40 years of your life, you are smart enough, skilled enough, and experienced enough to now know that the cycles that you have been living under do not serve you anymore. You have got to figure out how to break it and go try some different coffee. All right, that's it for today. Thank you all for tuning in. If you like this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and share button and leave me a comment. Where are you on the cycle? What question are you wrestling with? Are you at the half-century mark where you're wrestling with the what do I get to do now? Or do you find yourself in your 30s going, I settled, but I'm only 35 and I don't want to be settled, so now what do I do? Let us know where you are and let us talk to each other. Talk across the generations, and let's help each other break the cycle. That's it for now. Again, please hit the like, subscribe, and share button, and I will see you all soon. Have a good one. Bye.